Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. We're flipping open our visual field journal to dive into some truly incredible source material today. We're talking about Becoming Bulletproof, drawing straight from the real-world experiences of a former Secret Service agent. Now, look, you obviously can't be completely invincible in this world, but during the tragic events of 9/11, the author had this really profound realization. The ultimate antidote to terror and helplessness, it's taking action. By building overlapping layers of skills, kind of like the individual fibers woven into a Kevlar vest, you can make yourself significantly harder to stop. And honestly, that's exactly what we're going to map out today. Because this stuff, it absolutely matters, whether you're navigating high-stakes meetings in a boardroom or just walking down a busy city street.
To make this super practical, we're following a three-part inside-out defense strategy. First, we have Act 1, Protection, which is all about managing yourself. Then, Act 2, Perception, focusing on reading others. And finally, Act 3, Influence, looking at how you can actively shape your environment.
All right, let's jump right into Act 1, Protection. This is where we build your mental armor. Okay, so before you can handle any external threats, you absolutely must manage your own internal fear. We humans have a hardwired physiological threat assessment. You've probably heard of it, the F3 response: fight, flight, or freeze. So ask yourself right now, which one is your default? The author actually shares this chilling story of walking into her home with her mother and discovering an intruder. Her mother's immediate biological response was just to root to the floor. She literally froze. The author, on the other hand, instinctively chased the guy outside. She fought. Understanding your own default physiological reaction is the absolute first step to overriding panic in a crisis. I mean, think about it. You can't fix a freeze response if you don't even know it's coming.
So once you actually understand your baseline fear, you can start building mental resilience. And there are three core tactics for this. First up is the hormetic effect, which is basically intentional, gradual stress exposure. For example, the author developed an intense fear of the cold after nearly getting frostbite while guarding George W. Bush's inauguration. To conquer that, she intentionally started taking cold showers and literally forced herself to surf in the freezing winter ocean. Talk about building a mental shield. Then there's the fear of regret. After she humiliatingly failed a grueling NYPD Academy run, she used the fear of potentially getting a fellow officer killed to train relentlessly until she never failed again. And finally, the solution mindset. Instead of seeing a difficult older coworker as just a total problem, a corporate researcher shifted her mindset and realized he was simply terrified of being replaced. Finding the solution like that, it conserves your mental bandwidth for actual real threats.
So, with the mind armored up, we've got to move to the physical side of things. And there is a massive, often fatal misunderstanding that people have in a crisis: the difference between cover and concealment. Cover, like a thick concrete wall, actually stops bullets. Concealment, like a heavy curtain, well, that just hides you. Being what the author calls a shift agent means possessing the situational awareness to know the difference instantly. It also means always identifying two ways out of wherever you are. For example, the author will never sit in the middle row of a crowded movie theater. No way. She always picks an elevated seat near a secondary exit so she's not trapped if a crowd panics. These are super simple tactics, but they keep you safe everywhere, from the local grocery store to a packed stadium.
Taking that proactive Secret Service advanced team mindset into your daily life keeps you from looking like a soft target. Let's talk about your home first. Do not leave an empty Apple computer box sitting out by your trash can. That is a literal invitation to burglars. When you travel, always map out safe houses before you go, places like local hospitals and fire stations. And digitally, just delay posting those vacation photos until you're back home. Predators and thieves are always looking for perceived weakness and opportunity. By layering these small security habits into your everyday routines, you make yourself a genuinely hard target.
Which brings us to Act 2, Perception. Let's talk about becoming a human lie detector.
All right, so now we're shifting our focus outward to observe others, and we need to start by totally dismantling a massive myth. A polygraph machine does not catch lies. It just doesn't. A trained human interviewer catches lies, and they do it by comparing a person's baseline to their stress leaks. First, you have to establish a baseline. How do they act when they're totally relaxed? Then, you introduce a stressful topic and watch for clusters of nonverbal behavior that sort of leak out. For instance, the author was once interviewing a candidate who sat perfectly still. That was her baseline. But the exact moment illegal drugs were mentioned, the candidate's crossed legs started bouncing uncontrollably. That physical,
F3 reaction, that was a stress leak exposing a lie. And you can use this anywhere. It's just as useful for negotiating a business deal as it is in an interrogation room. Now, if you really need to test someone's story, make them tell it backward. Making up a lie requires intense mental effort, which causes cognitive overload. So if you suspect someone is lying, whether it's a hardened criminal, or actually scratch that, maybe it's just your teenager explaining why they missed curfew. Ask them to recall the events in reverse chronological order. A truth teller is just navigating a real memory, so they can usually do it pretty easily. But a liar? They are trying to mentally juggle a fabricated script completely backward, and they will absolutely stumble under that cognitive weight.
You also want to listen closely for verbal tells. When people are lying, they'll often stall with filler words, or they'll try to buy time by answering a question with another question. But honestly, the most fascinating tell is shifting verb tenses. There was an undercover LAPD detective who fabricated an entire story about a trip to Egypt. He was completely exposed because he shifted from the past tense to the present conditional. He said something like, "The column would be here." That one tiny grammatical slip proved he was creating the memory on the spot rather than actually recalling it. Okay, moving into our final segment, Act 3, Influence, the art of ethical engagement.
Influence isn't just about what you say, right? It's really about how you say it. That's paralinguistics. It's your pace, your pitch, and your tone. If you want to project real authority, you have to deliberately slow down your pace and speak declaratively. The author actually had to learn this the hard way. She got rejected by Fox News for sounding too demure because she realized she had spent years softening her voice just to fit into the male-dominated Secret Service. She had to train intensely, commanding her pace and pitch, to finally find her true authoritative voice. But hey, authority isn't just about sounding tough or declarative. It's also deeply tied to how you treat people. Undivided attention is quite literally one of the most powerful tools of influence you have. Put away your phone, look at them, make people feel important. The source material highlights President Bill Clinton as an absolute master of this. Even when he was running incredibly late to an event, he would stop to shake hands with every single kitchen worker, asking for their names and answering their questions. Giving that level of absolute, genuine focus builds an immense, unshakable rapport. And when it comes to actually getting good information out of people, you want to use what's called the TED technique. Tell, explain, describe. Instead of asking those leading yes or no questions that just completely shut down a conversation, these prompts naturally invite a narrative. The author used this perfectly during a book publishing pitch once. Instead of trying to guess what the editors were thinking, she just asked, "Tell me what you liked about the proposal." Boom! It immediately primed them to open up and focus entirely on the positives.
See, true influence is never about bulldozing people. Not at all. It's about subtle, ethical maneuvering. It's about neurocoupling through deep empathy. It's about finding completely unexpected common ground. Like, there was a time the author secured a confession from a hardened murder suspect simply because they bonded over a shared thirst, and she brought him a Pepsi when her colleague only offered a Coke. It's wild, but it works. It's also about environmental priming. If you hand someone a warm cup of coffee and walk them into a bright, sunny room, you are psychologically priming them to feel warm, trusting, and ready to collaborate. Ultimately, commanding respect and wielding real influence requires genuine character. The author modeled her own character after the standout traits of the leaders she protected, absolutely regardless of politics. She observed George H.W. Bush's deep gratitude when he shaved his head in solidarity with a sick child. She witnessed Hillary Clinton's fortitude, marching in a parade despite immense security risks. And she noted Barack Obama's magnanimity when he graciously took a family photo with a congressman who'd spent years constantly berating him in public. Adopting the virtues of those you admire, that is exactly how you forge your own leadership identity.
Well, we've reached the end of our visual journal today, and I really want to leave you with one final thought to chew on. You cannot eliminate fear from your life. The world has dangers. Period. When the author was a child, her father took her to a Greek monastery to look at the actual skulls of victims of a massacre. Now, he didn't do this to traumatize her. He did it to teach her early on that you must face death, injustice, and fear head-on, rather than hiding from reality. Action is the antidote. So taking everything we've mapped out today, from understanding your F3 response to spotting lies to owning your true voice, how will you use your fear to build your own armor? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll see you all next time.